and actually just turn the fucking TV off, throw it away. It's a load of shit. Don't watch television. And when you do that and you start focusing on higher states of the mind, like through meditation.
Harnessing energy from our star is a fundamental human right, and we have turned sunlight into a universal source of basic income. Through Sun Exchange, anyone can buy solar cells and lease them to commercial-scale solar energy projects in the sunniest cities on the planet to earn solar-powered money. We started in South Africa, where there's plenty of sunshine and an ever-increasing demand for electricity. We are streaming monetized African sunshine around the world. And that is a quote from Abraham Cambridge, founder and CEO of Sun Exchange. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our guest for today. And this is another episode of the Grey F podcast, where we discuss business, technology, finance, relationships, lifestyle design, and all things productivity related. This is where I talk with people who are walking the talk and have skin in the game. No BS. And this is episode number 97, and we're getting closer to 100 episode, and I'm really looking forward to that. If you're listening to the Grey F podcast for the first time, I definitely recommend that you go down the list and find some of the podcasts that we have done before. We have had a lot of incredible guests here and discussed very different topics. So you can just, look it up and pick and choose what you like and what you would like to, to learn more about. The concept here is just about learning from people who are actually doing it. So without further ado, I will introduce you to my podcast episode with Abraham Cambridge. Enjoy.
Mm-hmm. So I think let's start with an introduction for some people who don't know what Sun Exchange is and who don't know who Abraham is. And,
cool.
Yeah. So let's take it from there.
Okay.
So you, if you meet someone at the event or at a coffee shop downstairs, how do you introduce yourself usually?
Are we recording now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, so I'm Abe Cambridge. I'm the founder and CEO of the Sun Exchange. And the Sun Exchange is a marketplace where anybody in the world can purchase a solar panel and have it leased to a commercial or industrial solar project. And the user of that solar panel in that project gets to benefit from zero upfront cost solar power. And as they use the solar panels, the rental payments they're paying for using those solar panels gets distributed back to the buyer of that solar panel, and that's paid in Bitcoin. So it's solar panel micro leasing. You could probably compare it to something like Uber or Airbnb. It's very cliche to do so, but effectively this is the solar panel sharing economy. We identify empty roof spaces in emerging markets, starting in South Africa, of businesses, schools, hospitals that would benefit from clean energy, that want to go solar powered, but they don't have the upfront capital. So we host those projects on our platform and invite people around the world to buy the solar panels for those projects. Once the solar panels have all been purchased, the solar project goes ahead and gets installed, and it runs for 20 years. So effectively, someone sat in an apartment in London can now own a solar panel, sat on a roof on a factory in South Africa, and earn a Bitcoin income stream for 20 years. So we call it solar-powered money, or monetizing sunshine. Mm-hmm. So you can visualize it that we're basically converting photons to electrons to crypto, and that's being streamed. So the ultimate vision is to build a solar-powered financial system that streams monetized sunshine around the world 24/7, 365.
Right, so that's how you introduce yourself at the coffee shop. That's like a very good introduction.
It depends where the coffee shop is.
Yeah, right. So you're indistinguishable with solar right now, because if everyone thinks of Ab, they think, the solar guy.
Yeah, well, I've been in the solar industry since 2008. So my academic background is actually in climate change science.
Right.
And the more I studied climate change, I did a master's degree in the science of climate change. Mm-hmm. And in my first term, can I swear?
Yeah, for sure.
It's fucking horrifying. Honestly, it's actually, when you look at the risks to the planet of climate change, it is terrifying. Mm-hmm. And obviously academics and scientists can't overplay it. They have to just present the facts, and that's what they're doing. And they're saying like 99% certainty that these things are going to happen. And then lobbyists from the oil industry, fossil fuel industry, just as they did with tobacco and seat belts, basically lobby governments to say, no, that 1% uncertainty is not enough for us to change the way the economy works, and therefore we just keep going down this route of fossil fuel exploitation.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if we were to go to a solar-powered future, that we can transition from that. So I kind of recognised this during my master's degree, that there's no point continuing looking at the problem of climate change because we know it exists. Mm-hmm. Let's start working on the solutions. And I got into solar because I was studying how what the biggest environmental impacts of businesses and industries are. And when I surveyed them and audited the university as part of my project, I realised that energy is the big thing. And so I started to do a feasibility study on how to solar power a local hospital, which is a big hospital. This is a big county hospital in the UK. And this is all in Britain, mind, in 2007. And like the results of my studies were that, like, holy shit, this solar industry is about to happen. Like when you look at the cost trajectory of the cost reduction in solar cells, and you look at the subsidies that are about to be introduced into Britain, it was like, holy fuck, this is going to be a big thing. And you know, I remember I went to a music festival and I saw an aeroplane like in the sky, and it did a loop-the-loop. It was like a stunt plane. And it just made me recognise that 100 years ago, there was no such thing as an aeroplane. And today, and now we've got 1 million people in the sky at any one time with Wi-Fi and caviar and like showers on planes in 100 years. And that's what we can achieve when we put our minds to it. So within 100 years, we could theoretically have the whole planet solar powered. And the technology was there, and it is coming of age. So it really excited me. And it's like, I went back to my university, completed my dissertation really quickly because I just wanted to get out of the way, and I then got a job as a solar panel installer. And my first job in the solar industry in 2008 was stripping a roof of concrete tiles and replacing them with solar tiles, like actual solar-powered tiles. And this is a product that Tesla announced a year ago. And I was installing them 10 years ago. So it kind of shows like I've been in the solar industry since before it was a big industry. But I think fundamentally, though, I've always been cognizant of the fact that the incumbent financial system, which is basically the petrodollar, like investing in fossil fuels, exploiting them, cheap, abundant fossil fuels, and in increasingly more environmentally damaging ways, such as shale oil, tar sands, and hydraulic fracturing. The banks that the crypto sector set out to disrupt, I'm sure we're all familiar with the Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain, because in that block was the record of the Times article in the 3rd of June saying that there's going to be another bailout of the banks, which has been approved. And that was when Bitcoin was launched, and that in the Genesis block was that record of the banks are being disrupted because it's a broken system. Let's build something that's better and more elegant. And so anyone who's into Bitcoin is kind of aware of that. Let's build a new, more distributed, fairer, elegant financial network. But whilst the banks that were being set out to be disrupted are still investing in fossil fuels, they're still succeeding and they're still winning.
Yes,
because they're making huge amounts of profit sourcing and burning fossil fuels, and that's what they're still exploring. So banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland was actually one of the main banks that was bailed out in Britain. £42 billion worth of taxpayers' money was bailed into that bank. Like, honestly, it's not even a bailout, it's a bail-in. £42 billion put into that bank to prop it up, public money. And then a year later, that bank, under public ownership, paid themselves bonuses of £1 billion whilst reporting losses of £1.1 billion in the same year, a year after they were bailed out with public money. And since then, banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland have been going around the world funding hydraulic fracturing, causing climate change, basically financing climate change. And this is still the same system. So whilst cryptocurrency is amazing, it's a breakthrough, whilst we're still using fossil fuels, that side is still winning. Climate change is still happening.
Right.
We've still got that broken system operating and succeeding. Let's build a solar-powered financial system, one that's backed by solar power, like the resource that's cleanly and abundantly available from the sky, from anywhere on Earth.
Right.
That's generating value. We now have silicon chips that convert that into not only to energy but into money, which can be transferred around the world. So I guess this is a very long-winded introduction, but at least it basically shows you what the kind of the philosophy is behind Sun Exchange. We're about transitioning the world to a solar-powered economy, one that is solid-state, silicon-based, to generate economies of abundance for all.
Right, man, you just blew my mind. I never thought of the relationship between, say, money or the current financial system. I knew that it's linked to the fossil fuels and all the other stuff that these guys do, but I never thought of with Bitcoin, as long as we're not running on solar energy, we're pretty much playing the same game.
Exactly. If you're into crypto because you're trying to, you can be into crypto because you want to make money and speculate. Fine, great. Everyone can do that. But if you're into it because you understand the principles and the fundamentals of it, that's when you're a true Bitcoiner. When you really know what this is actually all about. Like, we're building a new financial network, one that's decentralized, beyond the scope of being manipulated or bailed out by bad decisions. Because if you're running a program or you're running a business that fucks up, don't go crying to mummy and daddy when it breaks and ask them to bail you out like the banks did, which forces future generations effectively into poverty because of inflation of this free money that's being produced. You can't do that with Bitcoin, and that's the principles of it. But whilst you're still running Bitcoin mines using fossil fuels or not running your home on solar power, then you're kind of still supporting the other system, the old network. Right. If you want to join the new network, you've got to be into crypto and solar. But here's the catch: most people in the world can't own solar panels because they live in apartments, they live in informal settlements, they can't afford the hardware for a whole solar plant, or they live somewhere where solar power is suboptimal, like Scotland or northern parts of Europe, other northern parts of Europe. So what the Sun Exchange is here to do, and is doing, because we've got 6 operating solar plants running already, owned by our membership now in 90 countries around the world, is at the click of a button, somebody can now own a solar panel on someone else's roof anywhere in the world. And because of the wonderful aspects of Bitcoin being this transnational, borderless, frictionless payment system, which is what it was built for, you can now own a solar panel on a roof somewhere else in the world and have payments distributed to you frequently in microscopic amounts, which means that we can now break down owning a solar plant down to a single solar cell. Before, to go solar meant owning a whole system, and now through Sun Exchange you can own a cell within a system. Right. So within units of $10 or less than 100 Rand, and even our most recent project was 57 Rand per cell. Before, you'd have to have had 400,000 Rand to put a system on your roof. If you're a business, maybe less if you're a homeowner. But basically, that's 3 orders of magnitude now lower cost point of entry to owning a solar panel. Right. So you could be living in an informal settlement and now with 57 Rand own a slice of a solar panel that's generating you income. Right. And that's really what this is setting out and is doing. Okay, so it's one thing when someone I can buy solar from here, get it installed in Kailicha, someone use it, and I get some payments from it. That's awesome. So, the solar panels aren't installed. They're installed in commercial and industrial projects. Okay, that was just an example. Okay. Yeah, so I can get it installed in a hospital in Kailicha. I get paid from it. Yeah. Over time. That's awesome. And for someone who now who is in northern Europe, I suppose they can do the same. But now this is just a question to the solar industry. To areas that are so cold, they cannot really harness the sun energy as much.
What would be the solution to those kind of places if you're in Scotland?
If you're in Scotland, you harness the resource which is abundant to you. So in Scotland, they've got an abundance of wind, and they've got abundance of wave.
Right.
And I think Scotland has now got probably one of the largest proportions of wind power in terms of their energy grid than anywhere else on Earth. They've just installed the largest offshore wind farm, floating wind farm, offshore of Scotland. It's like gigawatts of wind power. So they shouldn't be trying to harness the sun. You don't put a wind you don't go if you're a lumberjack and you're into forestry. You don't go to the Sahara Desert and going hunting for trees.
Yes.
You go to where there is forests.
Yeah.
So if you want to harness solar energy, don't put them in Scotland. Put them in South Africa. And from a climate mitigation perspective, which is how I got into all of this, like the embodied carbon, like the amount of greenhouse gases produced per kilowatt hour in South Africa's grid that's mainly coal powered is about 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour, which is more than double that of England. And likewise, a solar panel installed in South Africa produces twice as much electricity as that solar panel would whilst installed in England.
Okay, twice.
Twice as much electricity. Wow. And therefore, a solar panel installed in South Africa saves 4 times the carbon emissions, offsets 4 times the greenhouse gas emissions than the same solar panel would if it was installed in the UK. And there's more solar panels in the UK than there is in South Africa right now.
Oh, wow.
Which is absolutely insane. So when you look at a map of the electrical grids of sub-Saharan Africa, I think that you'll find that very, very, very small proportion of people are even connected to the grid. There's 650 million people who can't access electricity at all.
Oh, wow.
And so to connect the 650 million Africans that don't currently have access to utility electricity is going to take decades if you're doing it in the old-fashioned way of building a centralized power station and networking it all out and building it all. And in those decades, people living in rural areas get frustrated of not having access to electricity and not having telecommunications, spending all their income on burning kerosene, which is terrible for one's health, and then moving to cities, joining in informal settlements and townships because they're seeking electricity and they're seeking everything that the modern world provides.
Yes.
And that just adds to the problem of urban migration, and culture expands and expands and expands. So the solution, therefore, is, and this is where solar power comes in, is that solar power is now the cheapest form of electricity on Earth where there is sunlight available, and it's also the quickest, most readily deployable. So we're working with a company called PowerHive in Kenya, and they are building microgrids that connect rural villages, about 200 homes at a time, to a 100% solar-powered microgrid, and they build these in a month. And they've got 20 running already, and they've got 10,000 sites lined up. And so you're now electrifying, and there's 8 people per home in these villages. So we can now, together, everyone, through Sun Exchange, directly with PowerHive, can now electrify hundreds of thousands of people with solar power cleanly and more affordably, and a much faster time scale than waiting for fossil fuel thermal generation power stations to connect them. Right. So the acceleration for the electrification of Africa can happen through solar power, and it also means that Africa can develop sustainably and without contributing to global greenhouse gas emissions, with the added benefit of not then being in the pocket of fossil fuel companies who will increase the price of fuel.
Sure.
So once you own solar hardware,
that's interesting what you said there, because the price of fuel increases over time.
Yeah.
Whereas the cost of solar has been decreasing.
It's fixed.
I'm not talking about the bill that you pay when you're using the solar panel, but like just the cost of solar itself.
Yeah.
Over the years is increasingly decreasing.
Yeah. So the cost of a solar cell now, you're talking probably around. I actually lose track because it's so cheap. In fact, the cost of a whole solar plant per watt now is probably around 90 US cents a watt.
Right.
Or maybe around about 10 or 11 rand a watt. What would your audience understand? Dollars or rand more?
Rand more.
Okay, so
I think just to make it more global, let's use dollars.
Okay. So the cost of a solar plant now is around 90 US cents per watt, and that's for the whole plant, fully installed with labour, copper wiring, inverters, mounting systems, the works.
Yeah. What was that like 2 years ago?
So,
how much was that?
Well, I'll talk about when I first started in the industry, 2008. You're talking like $6 a watt.
Oh,
no,
wow.
maybe more than that, because that was pounds, like $10 a watt. So basically, it's now a tenth of the cost in 10 years. But I don't foresee that increasing to another tenth in another 10 years, because the real cost reductions have come from the efficiencies of manufacturing solar panels.
Sure.
And the silicon wafers in those panels. And that has now kind of reached is now plateaued.
Right.
It's getting gradually cheaper over time, but not as exponentially as it was.
Yes.
And the rest of the solar plant is still other materials which those costs don't really come down, like copper and aluminium and semiconductors and the inverters, and of course labor. Those costs can't really come down. It just comes down to economies of scale.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest objections people often cite when they're considering going solar is, I'm not going to do it now, I'm going to do it in 10 years time when it's cheaper and there's a better system available.
Right.
But that's the equivalent of saying, I'm not going to buy a laptop because there's going to be a better one in 10 years time, so I'm going to not have a laptop and not use it for 10 years,
right,
and not be connected to the internet for 10 years because there's going to be one available, which is just a bonkers philosophy, because you need to be able to utilize that today. And actually, there's no breakthrough technology in solar on the horizon. There's only ever a certain amount of sunlight available to convert to electricity. It doesn't matter how good your solar panel is, there's only that much sunlight.
Right.
You can only capture that much. And that's if it was 100% efficient. So you've got 2 kilowatts per square meter maximum on Earth.
Yeah.
So you can have a 100% efficient solar panel if you want. What you've got essentially then is a black hole, because nothing can escape from it.
Yeah.
So you don't really want a black hole on Earth, but that's what 100% efficient solar panel is. But even then, you're still only getting 2 kilowatts per square meter.
Right. So
it's like there's no breakthrough. It's just like, let's do it now, and not.
Like you said, that the curve now is at a constant level.
Now's the best time to go solar. It's now affordable. It's better than grid price electricity, and the more people do it now, the gradually cheaper it will become, enabling more and more people to do it. If you wait for it to become even cheaper, you've basically just been exposing yourself to higher costs in the interim.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity cost of waiting, and that people often don't factor that in.
So, the concept of solar in general, it's really interesting. Right now, people are more in tune with the concept of climate change. Nobody wants to be that part of history right now. A lot of people, at least.
We're the last generation of humans that can do anything about climate change, and but we're also the first ones to be really aware of it.
Yeah.
I consider myself a millennial. Like, I'm probably an elder millennial, but I was born in that window. And basically, we're now cleaning up the baby boomers' mess.
Yes.
And when I speak to baby boomers, they're a completely different philosophy, completely different mindset.
Absolutely.
They just think numbers, business, growth, and it pisses me off, because we're the people inheriting this planet, and our children are going to be subjected to the environmental consequences of basically what the baby boomers did through overexploitation of resources. So we now have to be much more aware of where we're spending our money, where we're investing our money, and the resources that we're consuming. So, for example, if I can choose my electricity provider, which in England you can, because it's not a state-owned monopoly like it is in South Africa.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So you can choose your electricity provider, and there are 100% renewable energy electricity providers, so you can switch. But in South Africa, you've got Eskom or no one, unless you buy solar panels.
Yes.
That's the only way you can get electricity without going through Eskom, is through owning solar
So
panels.
yes, that point you said is very interesting. My point was that, solar gives you, it's the idea that, you can completely control your energy supply.
It's the democratic form of energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and you don't have to pay any utility bills if you own
it's a piece of hardware.
Exactly.
It's
that you
just
install.
a piece of electrical equipment that you own, and it does stuff for you because it's yours.
But now, when I'm traveling, I've seen some people trying to install solars, in their homes privately. How much energy, or how much really, would you need to invest to run a home completely at a solar grid, so that you don't need any extra?
What kind of home are you talking about? Is this
a middle class home? Let's say. Yeah.
Middle class home, you probably need around 4 kilowatts of solar panels.
Right. That's now you're running 100% on solar.
Yeah.
Every day.
Exactly. Well,
in Africa, say.
Yeah, 4 kilowatts will probably give you enough electricity. It depends what you're using. If you've got like air conditioning units or underfloor heating or whatever.
Okay. Let's say your home.
Okay. I think your home probably around 4 or 5 kilowatts.
Right.
I think that would be a suitable size system for a modest home.
Okay.
And I think the point is, though, that it doesn't matter where your solar panels are. You just put them where they're most optimized.
Right.
And the problem with putting them on your own home is that most people are out during the daytime. You know, you're at work, your kids are at school. So all the solar panels, when they're on peak production, like middle of the day, there's no one at home using the electricity. So unless you've got a storage system implemented, then that electricity is being wasted. And in South Africa right now, you can't export the power and get paid from it in a reasonable. You can in Western Cape, but you don't get paid the true value of that electricity. You're basically paying to export it. So it's kind of unfortunate. But think of what businesses and industries, as businesses start operating in the daytime, their kind of energy demand is the same pattern as the electrical output of a solar panel.
Yes.
So if you are a homeowner, you're better off putting solar panels on the roof of a factory, and they're there for 20 years. Because if you put solar panels on your own home, you may not be there for 20 years. Yes. You may move in 5 years' time, and you don't own your solar panels anymore because they're tied to the home. So you're better off putting solar panels somewhere they're there for good, like on the roof of a hospital or a school that's going to be there for 100 years into the future.
Yeah.
Put them there, and you've got 100% guaranteed, 100% offtake of your energy. And you're then still getting economically incentivized for that. You're still earning money from owning the solar panels that are being leased to that project.
Right.
And you're still contributing to the environmental. Benefits of owning a solar panel. It doesn't matter where your solar panel is on Earth. If you're offsetting carbon reductions, you're offsetting carbon reductions. If you're saving kilowatt hour, it doesn't matter if you're saving kilowatt hour from your own home or from a factory.
Yes.
It's one. The planet is one.
So
it's a closed system.
For a lot of people would be asking, like, okay, they understand what you're doing with it. You know, you install solars on businesses, hospitals, schools, whatsoever, and then if...
Just to make it clear, we don't do the installing. We use a network of installation companies that do the installing.
Sure, but you do the crowdfunding.
We're the marketplace. We're like we're the marketplace that brings together all the stakeholders. So the person that wants to own a solar panel, to the person that wants to use a solar panel, to the person that wants to install that solar panel.
Sure.
We just connect the three stakeholders.
And this all happens through your website. If I want to install a solar panel, I'm pretty much just buying a cell within the fund that you guys created.
Yeah, it was not a fund. Yeah. It's absolutely not. It's a project by project platform.
Oh yeah, I needed you to explain.
Yeah. So it's definitely not a fund. You specifically you're specifically buying a solar panel through the sunexchange.com.
Okay, so let's break it down in layman terms here.
Yeah, I will. I'll go through the process of actually how it works.
Okay, sure.
So you go to the sunexchange.com, you purchase a solar panel, and you choose which project that solar panel is leased to. So it's kind of like eBay. You know, there's a certain number of products available for each project, and you buy a solar panel for each project you want to own a solar panel on. You basically can buy it with a credit card.
What are the differences in terms of, like, are you looking at which one is going to be more efficient, or is it just a matter of a social economic?
It's a blend really. We've created our own cryptocurrency called SunX, which is a gamified rewards token. So there's going to be a bit of banging out there.
No
so we've created our own currency called SunX, which is a gamified rewards program, and that's been built specifically so that people are incentivized to put solar panels on lots of different types of project. So they're not just seeking out the most financially advantageous, which will often be like large scale industrial projects, whereas schools are probably less advantageous financially, but they've got a greater social impact.
Yes.
So we're now creating our own currency. It's now out. You can even buy it through our ICO called SunX. And the more SunX you own, the cheaper the solar panels become to buy. But you get more SunX by buying into things like schools in microgrids than you would do for a factory. So people are now incentivized to accumulate SunX through diversifying their solar panels across that.
Okay, so the decision that you have to make if I buy solar from you guys on the platform, so if I'm choosing which projects do I invest in, those are going to be the things that I have to keep in the back of my mind, whether I own SunX coins.
Yeah, well, basically, the more SunX you've got, the cheaper the solar panels are to get to buy. But you earn SunX through using the platform, and you earn more SunX by buying into projects which are has more social impact.
Okay, so do those projects output different in terms of return?
Every single project has got a slightly different return, and because they all have slightly different energy economics. Ultimately, you're just earning from the amount of electricity your solar panel produces, and each project is in a different location in the country or around the world, and the user of that electricity produces is going to use 100% of the energy produced, but all the project sizes are different, so there's different economies of scale. So to put it into context, our biggest project is around 60 Rand a cell, but the electricity is being sold for less, or so the least cost is less.
Let's just make it clear out there for people listening.
Okay.
So you can invest in this with even 60 Rand.
You can buy a solar panel in units of 60 Rand,
yes,
and lease them to projects in units of 60.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you guys do, I'm just trying to break it down for an average person who probably don't understand this kind of crypto-like economics.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have a huge project. What you're doing is more like you crowdfund a project in a way.
It's crowdsourcing. It's not crowdfunding, because crowdfunding means you are creating a fund and there's going to be equity ownership and someone's managing it. But actually, this is a micro leasing.
So it's like I'm buying a little piece and I give it to you. I get it to you guys.
It's micro leasing.
Yes.
You're leasing the solar panel, the solar cell that you buy through the platform to a project,
and I own that solar cell.
You own that solar cell, and you're getting paid for the electricity your solar cell produces.
Right.
And we record how much electricity it produces, and we're paying that to you.
For how long am I
for 20
paid?
years.
For 20 years. So if I get 100 Rand, I buy a cell for 100 Rand from the platform, I'll be getting paid for 20 years through that.
And we target between what works out to be a 10 to 15% return. Obviously, that's an estimate, and there's no guarantees, but that estimate is based on the forecast electrical production of that solar cell and the forecast value of that electricity. So it's no different for the calculations you would do when working out the return of solar panel in your own home.
Yes.
Apart from this is done in such a way that the projects are bigger and more reliable, and with more social impact.
And I get paid in Bitcoin,
and
so I could also speculate.
You can get paid in Rand, or you can get paid in Bitcoin. Right. But most of our customers choose Bitcoin because it's a really neat way of starting to accumulate Bitcoin without investing in Bitcoin.
Right.
Because a lot of people feel they've missed the boat in Bitcoin, or it's too high risk to buy Bitcoin and the next day it goes down by 5% and people get scared and they panic sell and they've lost 5% in it overnight.
Right.
But through Sun Exchange, you're buying a solar panel, and every month you earn an amount of Bitcoin paid into your Bitcoin wallet.
Right.
Regardless of what the Bitcoin price is, you get that amount's worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it's just paid over 20 years and it accumulates. And that basically means, because it's transnational, anyone in the world can now earn from the platform because we're using a single currency to transact with the whole planet.
So you're a Scientologist. No?
A Scientologist? No, I'm not a Scientologist.
Okay.
No.
Then,
you mean like the religion?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a Scientologist. No.
Okay, interesting. What religion do you do?
My religion is Psytrance.
What is that?
It's I guess you could akin it to the fact that the universe is actually music. It's a performance. It's a symphony that's probably playing in someone's mind somewhere, another dimension.
Oh, okay. I find that a lot of climatologists are Scientologists, just from my observation.
Okay. I don't subscribe to any organized formal religion,
right,
because it's just someone's story and it's someone's fairy tale with characters involved. That may have very good morals behind them, but when people take them too seriously, it creates problems.
Absolutely.
Because people get too carried away with it. I'm probably going to be offending a lot of people right now, but ultimately you've got lots of groups of people, each claiming that their version of their story is the correct one and the truth, and that causes arguments and friction, and there can be an excuse to fight with one another, and that sucks. When ultimately we are all one giant family. We did evolve. We did come from planet Earth. What the universe evolved from, I don't know, but also what consciousness is. Now that's the interesting question,
right?
Because what our consciousness is, when you dream and what you're believing, what you're feeling, what is thought and where does thought reside, and where do we go when we die? And these are questions which are beyond our human understanding right now, and trying to break it down to saying, well, when you die, you go to heaven, and God made us. It's massively oversimplified. The complexity of the universe is so great. There are almost certainly multiverses and other dimensions which some people can interact with and observe. And it's like our civilization, our ability to understand and model has now made obsolete some understandings of how the universe was thought to operate.
Well, what was your, like, when you were growing up, did you go through phases in terms of understanding the universe or religion, or what ended up creating this mindset of yours to this point in terms of like what you think about what religion is or spirituality?
I think I've often been into sci-fi,
right?
But I guess it's through like psychedelic experiences,
right?
Through meditation, through dance, and obviously active compounds which are natural or have been discovered to activate high levels of consciousness in the brain, which reveals elements of yourself and the mind and the universe which are otherwise invisible and that most people are oblivious to. So, for example, psilocybin is something that's been used throughout the whole of human history, which has been used by shamans and through all sorts of other people throughout every tribe in the world can access these higher states of consciousness through some means or another. And when one uses these in the correct environment, they can be very, very, very useful tools for understanding yourself and the world around us. And without that, you're basically kind of locked in a prison. Because if you're just watching television,
yes,
that's like your brain is working in a certain mindset. Certain brain waves are being released, which I think they're called beta brain waves, which is basically almost like a dream state. It's basically like you're basically not awake when you're watching TV.
Yeah.
Like your
really
brain, you're just receiving,
yeah.
And most of the messages being received are actually atrocious. It's just like news which is deliberately trying to scare you,
yeah.
Adverts trying to make you feel
insecure.
Insecure, exactly. And actually, just turn the fucking TV off. Throw it away. It's a load of shit. Don't watch television. And when you do that and you start focusing on higher states of the mind, like through meditation and through visions and through listening to good music, like music that makes you feel genuinely good, that's rich in
right.
quality, like psytrance. Listen to psytrance, go to a trance party, meet people, and experience what it's like to open your mind to all the other richness of the universe around us, and it will change your life.
So let's get back to Sun Exchange.
Yeah.
Now, this was an interesting jump to all these other things. So how do you promise people 20 years of service? How do you make sure of that? And also, another question here, I had an interview with Joby Wicks.
Oh yeah, you've interviewed Jabesi Weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he runs
crypto mining.
Yeah, crypto mining.
He's one of our
service.
advisors. He was one of our earliest crypto investors.
Oh right, yeah. Oh, he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
So what they do with the mining company, BitClub Mining, you can actually claim your mining rig if you want at a certain point. So could you just break down those two?
Yeah.
Like how do you promise it 20 years?
Yeah. So the lease of the solar panel is being leased to the end user on a 20-year lease contract, and if they stop paying the lease, they default on the lease, and the solar plant can be removed and relocated. That's not the ideal situation, but ultimately that we've done some analysis on the user of the electricity to ensure that they're most likely to be using the electricity for the full 20 years because their operation is going to last 20 years. And if they don't use the solar plant, the alternative is the grid, and that's going to be more expensive. So they're incentivized to use the solar panels because the electricity is always going to be cheaper.
Right.
So there's a preference for them to use it. And we're supplying electricity to schools that have been around for 100 years, or factories that can be around for another 50 years because there's a tailor-made facility, and that product is going to be needed for a long period of time. So we're solar powering a tyre recycling factory. Now, even if we've gone fully electric vehicles, we're still going to need tyres, and this factory is retreading tyres, so we know that's going to be around for a long time. And these are the kind of projects which you're leasing your solar panels to. But ultimately, if there is a default on a lease, then the payments will stop, which is why we encourage our customers to put solar panels in multiple projects, because then you're kind of mitigating that risk.
Yeah.
If you put all your eggs in one basket and you're leasing all your solar cells to one project, then if that's increased the risk of a default that's hitting you. So we would recommend our customers just putting a certain number of solar cells in each project that we do, rather than putting a huge lump.
Can I sell a lease at some point if I want to?
So the idea of the Sun Exchange is not just about this transferring of value from the sun into people's wallets, which it is. It's also about what happens when you have solar-powered money and you have these solar cells that you own, but it's essentially producing yield. And so whoever owns that solar cell gets that yield. So it becomes a kind of like a yield-based monetary instrument. Now, this is we haven't really started doing this yet, but there could be a secondary market. So if you own a solar cell, you could sell it to somebody else through a secondary marketplace, and they would pay you for the value left in that solar cell. How that's calculated, we're yet to decide, whether we do it at the market price or whether we determine it based on its forecast value. But ultimately, I'd say in the next 12, 24 months, there will be a secondary marketplace on the Sun Exchange where you can transfer the ownership of your solar cells to somebody else in a secondary marketplace. How that's going to work, we don't know, because we've got more important things to be worrying about right now, like getting enough solar cells in operation so that there is liquidity in that marketplace. Obviously, there's no point just having a listing of 1 or 2 cells, because that's not a market. That's just that's basically a gum tree.
But you moved from London to here.
No, I started here.
You started, but it makes sense. Why? Because we have we can harness more solar energy here.
I was working in the solar industry for 5 years in the UK, and the government pulled the subsidy, the market collapsed, and it made me realise that the market was artificial. And I moved here in 2014, and I looked out the window. I moved here for the solar industry. But when I got here, I looked out the window. We're here in the City Bowl in Cape Town. You look out the window, and there was no fucking solar panels in sight. And it's just like this city's basking in sunlight. Or even in the winter, the sunlight here is about as strong as it is in England in the summer. There's no solar panels on the roofs. And the reason why there aren't solar panels on roofs is because a fairly immature solar industry. The projects to get solar panels installed on roofs of factories are slightly too small for project finance, and businesses aren't willing to use their own capital. But there are no specialised, tailor-made, bespoke finance products to allow businesses to go solar with no upfront cost, which is what businesses in the UK can do. But that didn't exist in South Africa, and most banks aren't willing to invest in those projects.
But that was an interesting model, though.
Yeah, so Sun Exchange is built specifically to close this funding gap for commercial industrial projects in South Africa.
So you can install solars without anything up
exactly,
front.
And the trick was this platform, like the crowdfunding phenomenon had started, like Indiegogo, Crowdcube, Lending Club, all these kind of things, like these crowdsourced platforms. At the same time, cryptocurrency was coming of age in 2014. It was post-2013 bubble. People had understood what this network can do. It was being used around the world. There was 2 cryptocurrency exchanges here in South Africa, Ice3X and Luno, that were working in liquid. And it's like, holy shit, we can now, but if you merge solar panel ownership with the kind of crowdfunding model with Bitcoin, you now have this mechanism through which anybody in the world can own a solar panel on a project. And so I set out to build Sun Exchange, and it took me about a year and a bit to sort of model how it would look like. Then I launched it on Indiegogo to raise money to start it. 3 months later, I'd built the prototype at the sunexchange.com, got the first project online at the Stellenbosch Waldorf School, which has now been running for 2 years. That was the world's first cryptocurrency-funded solar plant. There are kids young at age of 8 in that school who own solar panels on their own roof of their own school,
that's
powering their own education, and are earning Bitcoin, and will do so for 20 years. And those are kids.
That's just mind-blowing. But so in Africa, South Africa got power, obviously, a lot of sun, but in other African countries, it's so much even better than here. But there you have, I was traveling Africa, like I told you, I just came back on last Friday. In other countries, you have a serious power problem where you can't even connect to the government grid. It's just so unreliable. I was in Malawi recently, and you had power trips 3 times a day. So you would have maybe 3 or 4 hours a day with power out of the 24 hours. So you see, those are the places also that really needs your solution, because now you can just install it, and the people have no alternative. They can just use it, and you know that it works.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you have any plans to go into
what we need now is solar projects. Like, we've built the platform. We do have a number of partners that bring us solar projects, but we're not getting them bought fast enough with customers that are ready to go. What we need is solar projects that have already been sized up, with the cost known of what it's going to cost to build. So it's kind of like an oven-ready solar project with an end user that's willing to take the energy. We'll then come in. We'll check the project. We'll do the due diligence on the design, and then we'll host it on our platform for the world to buy solar panels for. So that's what we're calling for right now is solar project developers and solar installers that have got projects that just need funding, and then we will put it on our platform.
Right. How large must that project be?
The project needs to start at around a value of around $50,000 as a minimum.
Right.
Because it obviously takes us time and effort to onboard it, and typically that's the kind of the threshold where the economics start to make sense as well in terms of the project. And so that would be enough for a medium-sized school or a large school, or any form of industrial or commercial facility. That would be a base load of energy. The biggest system we've done to date is 450 kilowatts. That's being installed at the moment over in Blackheath, here in Cape Town. And but the kind of the biggest projects we'll do will probably at the moment be around a megawatt. So we can, with the amount of capital we have available through our membership, we could theoretically fund a megawatt a month through the platform, which a megawatt is around $1 million or 14 million rand. So that's the kind of the upper threshold of the size of the project. But any project from 50 kilowatts, or if it's a microgrid, maybe 20 kilowatts
To 1 megawatt.
with storage up to a megawatt. Those are the projects that we can fund, and it can be if it's oven ready with a customer that wants to go ahead, but they don't have the money, with a system that's been sized up. We'll check it. We could get that live and constructed in 2 months.
Oh wow! And doesn't matter where it is.
It'll take a month for us to raise the funds,
Right.
Through selling the solar panels, and then a month to construct.
So do you have geographical constraints?
So right now we're ready to go in South Africa. So anywhere in South Africa, any school, factory, hospital, fabrication center, whatever it is, if it uses energy and there's a customer that wants to go solar but doesn't want to use their own money to do it, with a project that's been costed, we can do it instantly in South Africa.
Awesome.
We are looking at projects in Kenya and Ghana. Ghana particularly is got a very high electricity cost, so that's a very interesting market. We are exploring projects there, but it's going to take us probably about a year or two to really get established, because we need to get up bank accounts and get our business nodes set up in those regions. But it is happening. It is in the works. We just got contacted yesterday by a company wants to build a microgrid in DRC. Awesome project. We will do that. It will just take time. But of course that project wasn't oven ready. Like, it's still kind of speculative. So what we don't need is people coming to us saying, I've got an idea for a project to do this. Like, that's not what we do. We need a professional organisation say, we've got this project.
We need you.
It's been developed. The customer is on board. We know the system design. Here it is. It's going to cost 7 million rand.
Go ahead and do it.
And here it is. And then we'll punch it in our model, work out what the electricity cost should be, give a lease proposal to them. They'll go and present it to the customer. If they want to go ahead with it, we'll basically buy the system on their behalf and lease it to them.
Awesome. Great, man. This was amazing.
Cool.
I hope we do it again next time.
Cool.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you quickly. If you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive. Thank you.